Good evening. The purpose of my speech is an informative speech to understand and point out the impact that Nelson Mandela has left upon the world. Nelson Mandela, for the people that do not know, was a brilliant man, a man with great courage, charisma, and someone with a great sense of humor. He forever altered the dynamic of the people of South Africa. He was a man who refused to settle for anything less than what he believed in, and consequently, he continued to fight for what was right. Even in the face of the oppressive white regime, he never allowed himself to be anything less than a fighter. Mandela became renowned for his fighting spirit against the injustices of South Africa at the time and was highly respected because of this. His efforts to bring equality, peace, acceptance to fellow citizens of South Africa, both black and white, became a lifelong battle, and this was a battle in which he found himself designated to lead, yet persecuted for pursuing this. His winning philosophy was to battle inequality by approaching defeat and condemnation, not by seeking revenge from his opposed, but by gaining justice for the persecuted. 3 main points about the great man. First, his phenomenal ability to unite a country against all obstacles, under great odds, with great pressure against him and his personal family, and to bring it to a state of unity and pride within a nationalist South African country. His everlasting impression that he left on the world and the heavy footprints he set precedes that for justice regarding the struggle for equality among men of all colors and beliefs, and last, his love of children, the hope and future of a rainbow nation recently born from the ashes of apartheid. Being a leader does not always mean popularity. Even further, it means a steadfastly sail or a course plotted that may affect people on both sides of the spectrum. Apartheid South Africa was at a time a constant fear for the unknown to people who never knew what tomorrow may bring. Apartheid could be compared to a term more familiar with Americans, which is better known as segregation. And apartheid created unfair rules for the black populace, who made up 70% of the population. This meant things like no voting rights, different business standards, and the non-ability to move around within a country. Additionally, any black South African was forced to carry a small book that they called a pass, and this pass designated that specific person only the free movement to move around within a small part of a large city or town in which they were working in at the time. The main driver behind apartheid was a gentleman known as Hendrik Verwoerd. He had strong beliefs about people of different color, and some might even say to a point that there might have been, strong links to him and to Hitler with the ideas and philosophies that they had at hand. At the time, 9 different tribes of 9 various tribes of Africans were plucked from their homes and their way of life in rural areas, and then dumped and forced to live in the outskirts of major cities as cheap labor and employment for people in their homes, factories, and on farms. If any one of these people were found without their passbook, traveling outside of their designated vicinity, they were automatically arrested and jailed for a minimum of 30 days. Nelson Mandela devoted himself, his life, and the struggle in achieving freedom and equality for all citizens of South Africa. This work began in the early days of the 1950s, when South Africans' definitive objectives were to keep the blacks segregated and oppressed, and having the white people free roam within the country. His fight for peace soon evolved to a state of struggle for himself, filled with discontent and aversion from many men. This eventually led to the Rivonia trial and this led to Mandela's epic 27-year imprisonment, some of which he spent on infamous Robben Island. Although Mandela was imprisoned, he continued to fight from prison cell. When he was on trial for his sentencing and accusation of treason, he appeared in court without hostility or enragement to his prosecutors. He never showed weakness or uncertainty of himself, his beliefs, or his people. And he still represented hope to all that lived outside of the prison. One quote directly from Mandela, and I would read it verbatim, is, "I have fought against white domination, and I fought against black domination. I have cherished the ideal of a democratic and free society in which all persons live together in harmony and with equal opportunities. It is an ideal which I hope to live for and to achieve, but if need be, it is an ideal for which I prepare to die." In December 1988, he began to obtain offers from the government at the time to diminish his sentence or even get it terminated if he offered to state that what the apartheid regime did was right. Mandela promptly responded by saying prisoners cannot enter into contracts, only a free man can negotiate. He was considered to be a living symbol of the struggle against the apartheid South Africa at the empowering age of 30, and consistently refused to compromise his political stance to acquire his freedom. Nelson Mandela, prisoner 46664, was released on February the 11th, 1990, after 27 years and 5 months in prison. Immediately upon his release, Mandela, once again a free man, dove right back into the battle for which he gave up 27 years of his life with his family, his children, and subsequently his grandkids. Mandela then went through a phase where he was elected president of South Africa, and he worked tirelessly to bring South Africa to the forefront and to make sure that what happened in the past would never happen again. In 1991, at the first national conference of the African National Congress, which once again was a permissible organization after being prohibited from being an entity within South Africa. Then in 1993, along with F.W. de Klerk, Nelson Mandela accepted the Nobel Peace Prize for his lifelong work against apartheid and the oppression of people in general. The life-altering apartheid of the people of South Africa formally ended its reign of persecution and segregation on April 27, 1994. And the forever altering day of the 10th of May 1994, Nelson Mandela was inaugurated as the only first black president of South Africa, but as the first president of the democratic South Africa. Nelson Mandela stepped down in 1999 after only serving one term as president to work more directly with people. He immediately threw himself into setting up 3 foundations bearing his name. He continued his dedication to bring a voice and an applicant in the absence of those who are persecuted, an unrelenting fighting force. In conclusion, Nelson Mandela provided the nation of South Africa with a leader in their struggle, gifting them the inspiration that was essential for change and hope. And he allowed people to believe in others by first allowing them to have hope and faith in the future that would be more sustaining and tolerant.